What's up guys, my name is Will from Ghosthack, and today I'm going to show you how I would go about making a little more complex Serum presets. Now, not just complex as in the sound that I make is complex, but I want to focus less on the sound and focus more on a complex pattern. So I can make a Serum preset like this, where I can hold down just one note and it plays a pattern, such as this. So I'm going to take you through that preset specifically, and I'm also going to go through the important bits that you need to keep in mind when you're making your Serum preset play a pattern. Okay, so basically how I went about designing this patch is I knew I wanted 3 sounds. I wanted to create some kind of weird chord melody progression thing, and I know I needed 3 sounds in order to do that. So I'm going to use these 3 oscillators. I'm going to use oscillator A, oscillator B, and I'm going to use the sub, and they're all going to do their own thing. Obviously, I'm not able to control the individual pitches of the sub. I can control the individual pitches of these oscillator A and oscillator B, meaning that I can control more than just the octave. The sub only has the octave. I can't move it up plus 3 semitones or plus 7 semitones or anything like that. So the sub is going to stay stagnant, and then these oscillator A's and B's are going to kind of move around in pitch. They're going to be the ones that you hear moving. So keeping that in mind, I think I'll just go ahead and start with the sub oscillator because it's probably the easiest. I selected a triangle wave. All of these are triangle waves right here, so you can just keep that in mind. And I have it up 1 octave. Now the only thing actually modulating for the sub, like I said, I can't modulate the pitch, so the only thing that I'm modulating is the level right here, this volume, and it's getting modulated by LFO4 here. And that's just creating a slight pluck. There's just a little bit of volume difference there, so when we start the note, and when the notes repeat, you get a little bit of an attack. There's a bit of a transient there. So that's all that's doing. It's not anything complicated. It's just on trigger at 1/4. And while we're just talking about this LFO, I might as well mention that that LFO is added to the levels of both oscillator A and B as well. So all of these oscillators are going to be going up and down slightly in volume. Not completely. It's not a complete 100% sweep. So that's all the sub is doing. Pretty simple, pretty basic, pretty easy. But then we flip on oscillator A and things get a little bit different. And I'm going to show you how I did that. The first step was just to pitch it up an octave because this sub is plus 1 octave as well. And then I'm going to pitch it up 3 semitones, which gets you this, minus the slide. And I'll show you why that slide is doing what it's doing. It actually has to do with this LFO2 right here, which is controlling the pitch of this triangle wave in oscillator A right here. What I did was I just dragged LFO2 right onto the semitones, and then I selected this little range. You can see, you can get a better view of the range right here. If we go LFO2, right now it's at like 38 or 39, somewhere around there. And then using LFO2, once I set it on trigger and set it to 2 bars, I'm able to make kind of a long stretching pattern, so I can control just the pitch here and there. And it just loops back and forth. Of course, if I wanted to make this automation bigger, then I could have made this automation bigger, and I could have gone bigger places, and I could have hit different notes by just changing this value. For example, if I just pull this value down here, I just changed the pitch there. So you can just think of LFO2 and LFO1 once we get to it. You can think of these LFOs as basically just lines of pitch. When they go down, then the pitch goes down. When they go up, then the pitch goes up. And this one is controlling oscillator A. I also turned up the smoothing here, so now it doesn't just jump back and forth. It actually kind of slides there, almost kind of sloppily. You can hear it going brrr, and the reason it sounds like it's going brrr, where it's hitting like multiple notes there, is because this is on the semitones. This isn't on the coarse pitch. The coarse pitch is a very smooth pitch automation. You can go and actually slide down and up, and it will actually change in pitch. Whereas this semitones is actually going down in steps, like da 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 da, and that's important because now we're sliding up steps. When I turn up the smoothness, it's actually going brrr and sliding up the steps. So that's awesome, but other than that, there isn't really much else I did. This is just a normal triangle wave. And then we flip on oscillator B. And right now I'm going to turn off oscillator A just so you can hear what it is in comparison with the sub. So this one is actually lower. This is under the sub because the octave is not up at all. The other ones on the sub and oscillator B, the octave was up 1. So now we just left the octave at 0 and I pitched it up 7. And up 7 semitones is actually a fifth in harmonics. Like when I pitched it up 3 here, that goes up a minor third. And then when I pitch it up 7, it goes up a fifth. So we have it like this. And this oscillator is pretty much the same as oscillator A, except we have some different automation here. And you can see this is doing some different stuff with the semitones. You can see this is also just dragged right on top of the semitones. And I just selected a value and I moved these around right here. You can hold shift and click. I'm holding shift right now. Hold shift and click to kind of drag these in squares. It'll kind of snap to the grid as squares. But then I just found the right spot for them. And you can see because the area I selected was so small, then these steps right here, both this level and this level, are actually the same note. It wouldn't be the same note if I brought it up all the way. And that also sounds kind of interesting, but I just wanted to keep it right there for harmonic's sake. So these two automations, LFO1 and LFO2, are very similar. They're both on 2 bar, they're both on trigger, and they both just kind of step up and down at the same rate. And that's why they work so well together. Let me take off the sub and just play oscillator A and B. They just play together extremely well. And when you throw the sub under there to just solidify the root, it sounds very, very nice, and it's very pleasant to listen to. The next thing that I added was a little bit of distortion. I just used downsampling here. These last few effects are just to kind of give the sound a little more life and make them more interesting. This is downsampling, kind of makes it sound like an old broken video game. I just have the drive sitting somewhere at like 25%, 26%, somewhere in there. After that, I added a little bit of chorus. It's just a tad bit. You don't really notice this. This is just to give it a little more width and to open it up a little bit more. Just like some unison. And then some reverb at the end to fill it out. Just for fun, let's play some octaves. That sounds good. That also sounds really cool. Once you get up high, the bit crushing, the downsampling does get a little strong, and you might have to pull that back if you're doing something like that. But just right now, I like how it sounds. I think it sounds pretty good. But the other thing that I added here was a little bit of vibrato with this macro knob. And I think a little bit of this goes a long way. So this is how I did the vibrato. I went into a new LFO, LFO3 right here, and I created this shape. I have it on trigger, but I actually turned off BPM and I set it to somewhere between 6 and 10 hertz. I usually do it somewhere between 6 and 10. 6 can be a little slow, 10 can be a little fast, but it just depends on the vibrato you want. So that rate, this hertz, is just controlling the speed of the vibrato. So I set it to this triangle shape, and then I went into the matrix. And you can see when we go LFO3 for the source, and then for the destination, I selected Global Master Tune. And then I moved this just a little bit. I have this up just slightly. I don't even want to move it. This is just up 1. It's up just 1 in value, which in the sense of vibrato is actually a lot. Like if we were going full vibrato here for just 1, that's actually a lot of vibrato, so we only wanted some of that. So what I did was I made sure that it was bipolar, these double arrows, which means it's going both ways. And then I selected for the auxiliary source macro 1 here. And this means that macro 1 is now basically this, right? It's going to control this. This output, it's basically a dry wet for this vibrato. And I think that's extremely handy, and just adding a little bit of that on top of this progression really does add a lot, in my opinion. I think it adds a lot of character. But the most important thing I think that to take away from this is to kind of visualize these LFOs more as sequencers, not really as LFOs where it's constantly repeating like this right here. Just repeating like that on a loop, or even one of these. Like, don't think of it like that. Think of it as a long stretched out sequencer where you can actually program your sequences. Again, holding shift right here and then clicking around will allow you to make shapes based on the grid that you're in, and you can change the grid right here. So let me just put this back to where it was. To show you another example of what you can do with these sort of concepts, there's also this loop here that I made called Synthetic Triumph. And this is a loop actually from the NextGen presets for Serum package. And it's a nice long one. It's a little more complex and it sounds like this. And that's more complicated. Like, I have even more stuff going on here. One of these is actually a bass line where you can see I programmed this bass line to slide down like this and play these notes. And then we have this one right here, which is the main lead coming in and playing this pattern over and over. We have vibrato happening here, and this LFO is controlling when the vibrato is happening just in these spots. Like that. There's more complex stuff, but this is basically me using these Serum LFOs as sequencers. And that's, once you get into that mentality, once you really get that idea in your brain and you can think about it that way, it becomes a lot easier to understand what goes on in these complex presets, and it becomes a lot easier to make them yourself. It's a lot of fun. I highly encourage you to mess around with doing stuff like that because there's a ton of creative things you can do. So there we go. There was my tutorial on how to make kind of complex sequences inside of Serum by just holding down one note. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, you can hit the like button down below, and also you can hit subscribe for more music production videos and tutorials. And on that note, I'll see you in the next video. Happy producing. God, I can't. Oh, I can't.